On today's show, we'll recap the Ottawa Senators 4-3 overtime win in Chicago that saw a couple streaks continue and one come to a crashing end.
And the Ottawa Senators control their own destiny moving forward. We take a look at some of the crucial games for the Sens down the stretch.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just check out FanDuel to get started. Today is Thursday, March 6th. We are just over 24 hours away from the trade deadline. Lots of moves happening around the NHL. We'll get to that later, but first, Pillsy, wow, that was way more stressful last night than it needed to be.
Yes, certainly I was hoping for a easier way to 2 points, but it's 2 points nonetheless, Ross, and the curse of Chicago is over. It's dead. I'm hoping, Ross, that this is going to be the last time people tag me in the 5-0 loss to Chicago, because that's not going to be a storyline anymore. The Ottawa Senators barely were able to get it done, but they win 4-3 in overtime thanks to Tim Stützle, who extends his streak to 13-game point streak with the overtime winning goal.
But according to him, he played, quote, terrible. The exact quote he told our friend Kyle Bukauskas after the game, he says, I don't think we played our best. Our line was awful. I was terrible tonight. But Pillsy, you know who picked them up? The line I said yesterday on the show needed two. Josh Norris, David Perron, and Drake Batherson. A goal for Perron. They needed that one after falling behind. Chicago scores 2 goals in 44 seconds. You're like, oh no, what's happening? Ottawa could have been up 6-0 in the first period before those 2 goals right away. They hit 2 posts early in the game. They get the tip-in goal from Brady Tkachuk, but to go down like that, what an answer for David Perron. I think we should give him some love, because I think this last 3 games where the Senators are 2-0-1, those are his 3 best games of the year as a Senator.
Well, and what's the common denominator between those 3 games?
Wins?
Josh Norris being back, right? Like,
I guess it's not a win is not a common denominator. They lost in a shootout against Washington.
Oops. But that's what I was saying, Ross, when I had talked about Josh Norris being a huge player to come back into this lineup, because I said hopefully that gets Drake Batherson going. Batherson, 2 assists last night, and then that got David Perron going. He's had 2 goals in the last 3 games after having 1 goal in 19 games. So that, or maybe even 20. So that was huge for Norris to come back and boost that line. And Travis Green said it himself. That was their best line last night.
Love it. And they needed to be. Nothing fires me up like a Josh Norris one-timer goal. Shoot the puck, Noof, and good things happen like they did last night. That was the go-ahead goal. They give it up in the 3rd period, but Tim Stützle, I mean, this play starts at his own blue line. Ottawa didn't have possession at the start of overtime. I was shocked, man. Claude Giroux lost a face-off to Connor Bedard. They lose possession, but after a little while, it turns over at the blue line, and a backhand toe drag with a guy, Ryan Donato, the best forward on the Blackhawks last night, coming full steam ahead at you. And not only does he do the toe drag, he doesn't look to pass. He then just puts pedal down. I'm gonna go in, looks for Brady, crashing the net, goes, nah, that's a good back check. I'm gonna take it all by myself. He tried that move a couple games ago, and it didn't work out. I think it was against the Jets, where he just power move right to the net. He thought he was gonna draw a penalty. It didn't happen. This time, he just figures, why draw a penalty when I could just put the puck in the back of the net? Great play from Tim Stützle, and a much-needed win for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, that play was a combination of so many of Tim Stützle's skills, right? I think, but the main one is the speed. Like, for him to come into the offensive zone, take a look at where Kaiser, the defenseman, is, and say, I'm going to find a way with limited space to turn the jets on, get around this guy, and peel towards the net. Like, that's his speed, but he has to use strength too. He gets one hand on the stick. You got to be strong on that puck, and then you got to use your other hand to hold him off. And Kaiser basically has to rip him down just to try to slow him down or stop him from getting to the front of the net. And ultimately, that's what leads to this goal, because that pretty much negates any chance that there's going to be goaltender interference. And Tim Stützle is able to get it done. Ross, are you in the camp that believes that Tim Stützle purposely put that puck in with his foot? Because for me and Martian were like, if you guys think he was able to do that on purpose, that is an amazing feat of athleticism. Not that I'm doubting Timmy's athleticism, but that would just be wild to be able to, as you're falling down and being hauled into the goalie, to take the puck and push the puck down on your from your skate to the ice and drag it in on purpose. I happen to think that was mostly luck, but either way, it got the job done.
I think it was completely accidental. However, I also saw people online saying it was goalie interference. I saw people online saying it was kicked in. And to those people, what are you watching? Like the defenseman, why? Kaiser just bulldozed Tim Stützle over top of the goalie. And actually, I think the puck went in the net before he really made contact with him as well.
Yeah. I mean, that probably is close there. The goalie interference one, I could see how if you're a Hawks fan, you're trying to push for that because goalie interference is so weird. I didn't think it was goalie interference at all because of the way Tim Stützle was forced into Soderblom. But the people that were saying kicking motion, now those people are out to lunch.
Those people are out to lunch. You know who has packed his lunch and brought it on the last 13 games? Tim Stützle. I mean, let's look at overall in the National Hockey League. Since January 25th, the buzz cut game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. He has a great outing there. That starts this 13-game point streak. And since that day, only 2 players in the National Hockey League have more than Tim Stützle's 19 points. Roope Hintz with the Dallas Stars has 22, and David Pastrnak has 21. There's a 6-way tie at 18, but Tim Stützle, friend of the show, is third in the National Hockey League in points over that span. And he had struggled a little bit before that. It was like 1 assist here, 1 assist here. He hadn't scored a whole lot. And then all of a sudden, he's like, you know what? I'm a really, really, really good hockey player. Yeah, Tim Stützle had 2 points in that comeback win against Boston. But besides that, he went 5 of 6 games without a point before this streak started.
Yeah, he's really figured it out, and he's been the main driving force when it comes to this team's success. And he leads the team in points, and it's not particularly close, Ross. Tim Stützle has 64 points in 61 games. Second is Drake Batherson with 49 points in 61 games. So, math guy, that's a 15-point spread right there.
And he hits 20 goals, something he did not accomplish last season. He only had 18 goals in 75 games last year. He's only 6 points away from tying last year's output with 14 games until he ties the 75 that he played last season. So Tim Stützle, he keeps this up. Brady Tkachuk keeps scoring big goals. He's got 3 straight now for Brady Tkachuk. Hell yeah.
Yep.
We like that. So you get that combo going, plus you get some secondary offense from the Norris line. All of a sudden, this looks like a real hockey team. Now, one area of the game we didn't love. It was a bit of a Korpisalo start for Linus Ullmark, 2 goals on 4 shots. And it happened against Washington as well. Like, how would you help him if you're the coach? Say, hey, we got to get this first 5 shots out of the way, because he settled in. He made some big saves in this game, made enormous saves against Washington, but he can't be spotting 2 goals to start the game.
Ross, I'm so glad you asked the question in that way. I have a perfect way to help Linus Ullmark so that he's not making mental lapses and fatigue mistakes to start games.
Don't do it.
How about give the guy a break? I mean, I don't know. I still like...
No, that doesn't make sense, because wouldn't it be throughout the game you get more fatigued?
Well, I mean, you find... I find goalies, once you start to feel the puck and you get into the rhythm of the game, you can kind of figure it out. But I'll still stand by, obviously, Linus Ullmark. I'm glad he was able to get this team the win, but I still think that would have been the perfect game to give him a break there, because those were small mental errors there where I think if you got some time off, you're able to rest and recover, and you're able to start games off stronger because you're not as fatigued. Now, I'm not saying it's detrimental, but because they obviously still get the win, and he had to make some big saves, and he did. But I'm still nervous about pushing Allmark too much here, and now more than ever, you're up against, and we're going to get to this, the biggest stretch of important games. I would probably say, Ross, this next 10-day stretch, I believe there's like 8 games or something in that stretch. No, maybe a little less. But this next 10 days from March 8th to 18th, this will be the most crucial stretch of the entire season. And he's going into it having played, or at least started, every single game since before the break in Florida. So it's a lot to put on a guy.
I forgot how stressful meaningful games are. That was not an oil painting last night by any means. It was ugly. And that's what Travis Green said in the locker room. Sens post that little clip. He goes, that was an ugly game, but you found a way. So that, we always talk, if you don't have your A game, what's your B game? That was a bit of a C game for the Ottawa Senators, but they leave Chicago with 2 points, and that's all that matters. Yes, people will say, oh, you didn't get it done in regulation, tiebreaker, 2 points is 2 points. Ottawa breaks the curse. They had not won in Chicago in 9 seasons. I don't know if you caught the clip from, was it Drake Batherson after the game? He said, yeah, me and Brady were talking, and we're like, hey, we haven't won here in our career. We may as well do it tonight.
Yeah, that's crazy to look at the careers of those guys and be like, we haven't won in this city, and we've played there a good amount of times. Like, that's not good.
Now they have. Now they have. And do the Senators deserve reinforcements? And is it possible with the cap? The NHL is very active right now. We've seen lots of trades. We'll discuss some of them after the break, and then look at how the Sens control their own destiny with 11 of their final 21 games coming against teams in the race, 13 of their last 21 games at home, and only 2 are against the Western Conference, both at home. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it makes every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I feel like I've never missed my chance. Plus, the app is so simple to use. It's easy to navigate, so you're not spending time flipping through menus trying to get your bets in. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Those green numbers, those trophies, hit the account real quick. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our very good friends over at the Glebe Central Pub. Let me go represent our friends at the Glebe Central Pub. The GCP, where the vibes are free. You can find them at 779 Bank Street. Man, this hat goes well with my sweater. At the Glebe Central Pub, we know that it is the neighborhood pub in the heart of the Glebe, and they have live music every Saturday night. The LA Cats will be there from 9 p.m. to midnight this upcoming Saturday. And oh my goodness, how about a little Sens home matinee? And then it will take you to and from the CTC. The next bus, though, is on March 13th. Next Thursday, March 13th, the next shuttle. So get your tickets online at GlebeCentralPub.com. What we also love about our friends over at the GCP is their food is delicious. As you can see, we were there last weekend crushing the smash burger in honor of the Hamburglar, and they were absolutely delicious, weren't they, Pills?
Yeah, I love the smash burgers, Ross. Like the thin patties get nice and crispy. You get the side of fries on there. The cheese is oozing out of them. Absolutely amazing smash burger.
Just delicious. So go have yourself a great time at the Glebe Central Pub. Our pub in the heart of the glebe. Shout out to Nick Spence for the photo there. Absolute beauty. We love all the citizens that came out. Heisenberg was out there. We had Warnock Cabinetry there. We had a whole lot of great people having an amazing time. So go check out the place where the vibes are free. That's the GCP, and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. All right, Pillsy. You know I love representing the GCP, but I just have the buzz cut. It just feels nice. You gotta let it ride, let it air out. When the Hawks tied it at 3 last night, I'm giving it the old rub. It worked to tie it against Washington late. Holy smokes, what an exciting time to be an Ottawa Senators fan. Think about the way they've won these last 3. I keep saying win. It felt like a win to get a point there, down 3-0 against Washington. It felt like it in terms of where they were and what the expectations were at that point in the game. But against the Sharks, they're down 2-1 going into the third period. Yep. Washington, they're down 3-0. They get a point, abolish the shootout. And then last night, they're tied against the Chicago Blackhawks, and they find a way to get the victory. So Senators hockey is not for the faint of heart. And Pillsy, a big reason why they've been able to get these points, not only Tim Stützle, who we discussed earlier, but the 5th overall pick from the 2020 draft, Jake Sanderson. What more is there to say? Defensively, a couple mistakes last night, there's no question, but what he lacked in that area, he finds a million other ways to impact the game. And with Thomas Chabot leaving that game with an illness, so it is an illness, which is a good sign, not an injury, an illness, so people recover from those. Holy smokes, he played, 31 and a half minutes?
The night before, yeah. And
what did he play last night?
Last night, actually, this is going to surprise you, Ross. 23-17.
Oh, it felt like he was out there the whole game.
Yeah, seriously. I thought it'd be over 25 minutes for sure. But yeah, Jake Sanderson had an up and down game in this one. But I mean, he finishes off with 2 assists, and having to pick up the slack from Thomas Chabot leaving in the second period is no easy feat. So sure, a couple plays you'd like to get back, but I'm not holding out against Sandy.
No, me neither. And Travis Hamonic basically got the extra minutes that Chabot had. Hamonic played 21:04 and had 5 giveaways in the game. Jensen had 4 giveaways too. So it wasn't the prettiest oil painting last night. But what Jake Sanderson's been doing, and we rewound the clock to a very arbitrary date, January 23rd. He leads all defensemen in the NHL in points over the last, month and a half. I know that there was a couple of weeks without games, but that's still a 13-game sample size for Jake Sanderson, and 2 points up on Cale Makar. So the names on the list are still those where you're like, oh, damn, like it catches your attention when Cale Makar's second, Rasmus Dahlin, Zach Werenski, Thomas Harley are top 5 in this, all with 14 or more points. Jake Sanderson has 17 points in his last 13 games, only 2 minor penalties. And what I also love, how about 40 shots on goal over that span as well? So he's doing his best Cale Makar impression, and it is incredible to see.
Yeah, and he's got 6 points in his last 3 games. So, and all assists. So this guy is dishing the puck out for sure. And he had a lot of shot attempts last night, Ross. A couple missed the net. 1 hit the post to start, and a couple were blocked. So he's really taken on the role of being an offensive defenseman while being able to play a really good 2-way game as well.
More on the Ottawa Senators later on in the show, but it is trade season, and we've seen a lot of activity around the NHL. If you look at it, our initial trade targets list, Pillsy, Trent Frederick, traded. Mikael Granlund, traded. Yanni Gourde, traded. Luke Shen, traded. So guys are on the move right now. Let's start with that trade last night. It was broken at intermission of the Senators game. Like, this trade makes no sense for me. The Nashville Predators acquire Michael Bunting and a 4th-round pick for Tommy Novak and Luke Shen. 2 teams that aren't going to make playoffs, trading what felt like players that you would want to go to a playoff team.
Yeah, or you would think those teams would want to trade them for future assets because getting guys to help them right now doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That was funny, too. We got to see Elliot Friedman tweeting it live, and you could see the confusion on his face, and he's like,
oh, we're live?
Like, this is true, but I don't know why. And everyone is confused about that trade, but I got to think, especially for the Pittsburgh side of things, Ross, that they're looking to flip Luke Shen for some future picks after this, but certainly a weird one.
Very weird. The latest trade is Brian Dumoulin going from the Ducks to the Devils. The Ducks are retaining 50% of Dumoulin's salary. They get a second-round pick and apparently a decent prospect. Herman Traff, a Swedish forward, goes to the Ducks. So it's still a seller's market here. Like, if you're going to get into the mix here, and Steve Stamkos doesn't have a boatload of assets to work with at the best of times this season, not to mention the cap, this is going to be a tough market for him to make a trade.
Yeah, and the bidding wars are going to be there, I think, Ross, especially, I think, Ryan Donato. That will likely be his last game as a Chicago Blackhawk, and what a way to up your value there, because like we talked about, he was the best player on the ice for the Chicago Blackhawks, and I think the bidding war for Donato is going to start with a first-round pick, even as a rental, and then you're going to see which teams are really going to step up to the table to be the ones to grab him.
So here's my thought process on that. I'm not okay with it for a rental, for a Ryan Donato rental. If it was a Mikko Rantanen rental, that might be a different story.
We can't even.
Mikko Rantanen? Imagine a line of Stützle, Tkachuk, and Rantanen.
Dude, I know, but we can't even pretend to discuss the Sens are in on Mikko Rantanen.
No, so they're not, but it's fun.
Let's leave it at that.
Come on, it's fun. That's the biggest domino. Everyone's waiting to see what happens with Rantanen. The fact that 50% of his salary has already been retained, if another 50% gets kept by the Carolina Hurricanes, it could be an enormous addition. But the thing with that is they're not going to trade him to someone who they might play in the first round. Like, they're not giving him to the Leafs. Not that they play him in the first round, but a team you're competing with in the East.
I don't know. I think they're going to go to the top bidder. Like, people at the time thought it was a bad deal for Chicago. Marty Necas is a great player at 6.5 this year and 6.5 next year. Like, if the Carolina Hurricanes end up leaving the table with no Marty Necas and no Mikko Rantanen, I think they're going to be focusing on just getting the best return possible, Ross.
Yeah, I don't blame you for thinking that, but it's not a good situation if you're the Carolina Hurricanes.
But I mean, you got to give them credit, Ross. They offered him a 9-figure deal. Like, if you're the GM, you got to think like, okay, we're in the $100 million range here.
Yeah.
We're doing what we can.
You got to know before you make the deal. Ottawa's been bitten by that a couple times. So unfortunately for them, not for everybody else, because I don't think there's too many Carolina Hurricanes fans listening to this, it's going to make for an exciting deadline. We did have a major trade yesterday, and we're going to get to teams who Ottawa is competing with, and Tampa Bay is just simply not that anymore. It was a fun week. It was a fun week where Ottawa and Tampa were head-to-head.
Not that much fun. It was fun to think about how it could have gone, but it didn't.
No. It stopped being fun when they actually played against each other.
Yeah, exactly.
But the week leading up to that, where Ottawa had won 5 in a row and we're catching up, and Tampa lost in Chicago, we're like, whoa, what is going on? Tampa not only is 9-1 in their last 10 games, they just reacquired Yanni Gourde, who was a guy Ottawa had interest in, Oliver Bjorkstrand, who's got one more year left on his deal, and a 5th-round pick in exchange for Mikey Asimon, who they got off waivers from Winnipeg. 2 first-round picks and a 2nd-round pick. Now, the 2nd-round picks in this year's draft, a first next year, a first in 2027, because they don't have their first this year. Chicago has it from the Brandon Hagel deal, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Tampa is just saying, F them picks. We're here to win. And I think that the more I think about this, the more it makes sense for Tampa. Initially, I was like, oh, that's an overpay. But if Yanni Gourde plays well, he's coming off of his big ticket deal, like Alex Killorn got, like Andre Palat got. You win the cup, guys sign big tickets. You don't think he's going to take a discount to re-sign in Tampa Bay after this? I think he will. And you have Bjorkstrand, who's on his pace for his 6th or 7th 20-goal season. You have him locked up next year, too. So this is a team that understands their 2 best defensemen are 34 and 35 years old in Hedman and McDonough. Their window isn't closed, but when those 2 guys age out, there's going to be a bit of a reset, at least on the back end. So this is them saying, we're all in. And I'm going to give you a hot take here.
Ooh.
With the injury to Matthew Tkachuk and Toronto being Toronto, I say Tampa wins the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, it's not that crazy, Ross. They just, in an arms race,
They're 3 points out with a game in hand.
Yeah, they just really put themselves in a good position. And the thing about Yanni Gourde too, Ross, is in those cup runs, he was one of those guys that was really looked at as being like, this guy gave us the depth we needed to go on a deep run. And he's going to be stoked to be back there. And then Bjorkstrand is a great complementary piece that, like you mentioned, can score goals. Tampa is set up big time. And if Vasilevsky can play the way we know and have seen him play, they are a dangerous team.
Yes, they are. So that's the recap of what we've seen so far. Let us know. And we have talked about all week, so you can go check out old episodes, not old, but last week's episodes of Locked On Senators, where we have trade targets 2.0. There are still some available. Ryan Donato, Ricard Raquel, Ryan O'Reilly, Jared McCann, Brandon Tanev, all names that are still out there. And I think I guaranteed that Ottawa and Seattle would make a trade at this deadline.
You did.
The clock is ticking towards that. The clock's also ticking towards playoffs, and this is why the Senators control their own destiny. That's next. You're listening to Locked On Sens, your team every day. All right, Pilsy. So the Ottawa Senators have picked up 5 of a possible 6 points in their last 3 games, beating 2 bottom feeders and getting a point off of the first place in the Eastern Conference, Washington Capitals. By the way, Ovechkin now just 10 goals away from the record. He scored again last night, and that was a big goal because it tied it in the third period, and then Washington gets the win in overtime. Thank you, Tom Wilson, which means the New York Rangers stay below the Senators in the standings. Now they're tied in points, Ottawa with a game in hand. These two teams are both off today and tomorrow. They're going to be well rested for a Saturday matinee in Ottawa. We're going to say this a lot, but this is the biggest game of the season.
Yeah, this won't be the last time we say this. This is an absolutely massive game.
But it's the next time we say it.
Yes, but Ross, the New York Rangers, they've got some big injuries in that lineup. We're going to get to their lineup in tomorrow's episode and the game day preview, but you're at home. It's a matinee. Claude Giroux loves matinees. Get your prop bets for Claude Giroux in at FanDuel, and the outcome of this game could have huge implications moving forward for both of these teams, especially because the trade deadline will be over. So your teams are your teams. Your roster is your roster. The New York Rangers have already made huge moves this season. They've really changed things up, and it'll be interesting to see how these two teams battle. It's nice that it's a home game.
It's extremely nice because Ottawa's 0-2 against the Rangers this season, but both games were on the road. One of them they dominated. It was a goalie win for Igor Shesterkin. I think the shots were 40-20, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 41-19 even. But the other one was a complete blowout. It was embarrassing. What was that, 5 or 6-0? And they had 2 goals called back.
Yeah, that was really bad. Yeah.
That was awful. That was horrible. And then they played Boston, got shut out, and then they went on that 5-game win streak. It's been a season of runs. It's almost like an NBA game where it's like you score a bunch, then you allow a bunch, you score a bunch, you allow a bunch.
Well, and Ross, if we know anything about NBA games, the only thing that matters is the last 2 minutes in the fourth quarter.
Hell yeah. Great analogy there, Pilsy. So 21 games left for the Ottawa Senators regular season, and they wake up today, Thursday, March 6th, in a playoff spot. A big out-of-town scoreboard. Should we get to the out-of-town scoreboard first and then hit on the remaining schedule, or should we save that for the end of the show?
No, let's hit the out-of-town scoreboard first.
There are 9 games in the National Hockey League tonight, and there are many that include teams surrounding the Ottawa Senators. Pilsy, what I love about the out-of-town scoreboard tonight is we're cheering for good hockey teams. There's the Utah game in Detroit where you're like, okay, that would be nice for Utah to win. But I think the other 4 games we're looking at,
but that's a big game for Utah, though, Ross, because they are fighting for their playoff lives right now. And I don't know what happened yesterday, Ross, but I think the Utah's executive staff, they just turned their phones on, or they got the Wi-Fi connection going again, because they extended like three different players. I think Ian Cole, Kerfoot, and Vejmelka all just recently got extensions. So I think they're looking at their team and they're like, all right, who's in? We want to keep you if you're in. And how can we make this push to get to the playoffs? They're only 4 points out of that final wild card spot.
Yeah, they've got 3 teams to jump, though. Calgary's sitting in that spot right now. They're tied with the Vancouver Canucks, and then 1 point behind them is the St. Louis Blues. However, the Blues have played 2 more games than Utah. Okay, huge game for Utah then. Put your jerseys on, your Utah's jerseys on tonight, Sens fans, because you need that win. And this is strange. Utah's a minus 137 favorite on the road tonight.
Who are they playing?
Detroit.
Wow. Yeah, that's weird.
And hey, I've seen some Red Wings fans on Twitter say that their 2 losses to Columbus, one in the outdoor game, one before it, were the equivalent of when Ottawa smacked them around with tennis scores 6-1, 6-2 a couple of years ago. The Wings fans are not confident right now. Hopefully, they get another kick in the teeth tonight from the Utah Hockey
And
Club.
hopefully they become sellers at the deadline, Ross, because I've mentioned it a couple times. I think Detroit is in a position where if Steve Yzerman thought it was the time, he could make a big push here as well.
So we're also cheering for the defending Stanley Cup champions. The Florida Panthers are at home against the Columbus Blue Jackets. And one thing about Columbus, as incredible of a season as they're having versus their expectations, they are horrible on the road.
Yeah.
They have a 10-17-4 record on the road. They're 26-4 at home. So Senators fans, you're hoping that trend continues tonight in Florida.
Yeah, but Florida, that's a team dealing with some injuries as well. Obviously, Matthew Tkachuk, but they get Seth Jones. They got, Vanacek as a backup, but they know what they have here, especially Ross, because they've got a bunch of players on expiring deals, most notably Ekblad and Sam Bennett. So they're going to want to make sure that this year they really go for it, because it might be a different looking team next year.
Yes, it will. So we're hoping they go for it tonight, get a big win over the Columbus Blue Jackets. And the Carolina Hurricanes are minus 335 favorites at home against the Boston Bruins tonight.
Minus 335?
Yep. Boston still without Charlie McAvoy, still without Hampus Lindholm. Ottawa needs Carolina to do them a favor tonight. Ottawa will also be cheering for the Winnipeg Jets. They're on the road tonight in Philly, and I have a good feeling about that. I'm going to be hammering the Jets in that game. Like, look, they've lost 3 games in a row. They're too good of a team to keep that going, and Dallas is on a win streak right now. So what seemed like a very comfortable lead atop the Central Division and atop the, NHL, they're tied with Washington right now. They're only 6 points up on Dallas, and the Stars have a game in hand. So they got to get to winning. I think we're going to see the best of the Winnipeg Jets tonight in Philadelphia. And then late one is we need Montreal's win streak to come to an end. They've won 5 games in a row. They are in Edmonton, and I will be hammering all the Connor McDavid props. He has not played very well since coming back from 4 Nations. They've been struggling. They need him to lead the way tonight, and he knows that this is going to be a big game, all Canadian matchup, and I'm going to be really excited to watch the Edmonton Oilers tonight, minus 255 favorites. So the teams that we're cheering for tonight, minus 255 favorites in Edmonton, minus 335 favorites in Carolina, minus 295 favorites in Florida, minus 137 favorites in Utah, and minus 137 favorites as well with the Winnipeg Jets. So that is your cheering guide tonight. Utah over Detroit, Florida over the Columbus Blue Jackets, Winnipeg over the Philadelphia Flyers, Carolina over the Boston Bruins, and Edmonton over the Montreal Canadiens.
So, Ross, that's how the Ottawa Senators can get a little help from their friends, but I think we need to focus more on how the Ottawa Senators can control their own destiny. Let's get to that graphic we made this morning about the crucial games that the Ottawa Senators have left on their schedule.
So we already told you that they have an abundance of home games remaining. The Ottawa Senators will play 13 of their last 21 games at home. 11 of the 21 games, not all at home, but are against teams that are in the race with them. Most notably, 3 games against Columbus in a span of 11 days, With a home and home in there, it's the only road game that Ottawa plays, I believe, in the last 8 games of the season. You got to win 2 out of 3 of those, don't you?
Yeah, and especially Ross, I want to see them win the game in Columbus, like humble the Blue Jackets a little bit with that home record. But it's crazy to think that if you would have told us at the start of the year, Ross, that these 3 games up against the Columbus Blue Jackets would have massive implications on the final 2 wildcard spots, I wouldn't have believed you. We circled those games as, okay, you're going to have an easy opponent here, make the most of it, but that is not the case. Shout out the Columbus Blue Jackets. What they've done this year has been nothing short of amazing, honestly.
Amazing. And if they could somehow catch the New Jersey Devils, I'm cool with that too.
Yeah,
I'm cool with Columbus getting in. This isn't against Columbus. This is all about Ottawa and having to get themselves into the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. Ottawa has 2 games remaining against the Montreal Canadiens. One of them 2 Tuesdays from now will be in Montreal, and then they will meet in Ottawa on April 11th in one of the last 4 games of the season. So you've got 2 games against Montreal, 3 games against Columbus, 2 games against Philadelphia, who I know they're in the race. They're a team that is also 3rd last in the Eastern Conference, so they have slipped away of recent play, and we'll see if they sell Scott Lawton, how they approach the deadline. But those are still games that are very important for the Ottawa Senators. The Sens also play Detroit next Monday. They play Boston, I believe, next Thursday. Yes. They play the New Jersey Devils, who are all of a sudden slumping. They're 9-13-3 since just after Christmas, and Jack Hughes is done for the season with injury. And of course, the New York Rangers this Saturday. The Senators win what? 8 of these 11 games, and they're in a really good spot.
Yeah, if they win 8 of these 11 games, Ross, I think you can put an X beside their name.
Ooh, that's a hot take.
Well, not really, because if they win 8 of these 11 games, Ross, that's 2 points that these teams aren't getting. True. Right? Like, that's where this really comes down to it. Man, we got to beat the Habs in both of those games. I just want to squash any hope and belief the Habs have, especially because they've beat the Senators in the first 2 games this year. Once in Montreal and then once in Ottawa as well. So you cannot let them get the series sweep after the Sens had beaten them 9 straight times. That's classic Sens, the high win streaks and the low losing streaks. But for me, Ross, the big games I'm looking at here are the Columbus games, the Montreal games, and then Detroit and New York, like Philly, New Jersey, and Boston. Obviously those are big games still, but I don't have as much emphasis on those ones as I do the other ones.
Yeah, Ottawa's got 2 games in hand on Boston, and they're 3 points up. Boston has 3 wins in their last 10 games.
Yeah, and Boston, I just think they're running on fumes here, especially with the injuries they have on the back end.
And they're selling, right? They already got rid of Trent Frederick, and we'll see what else happens before tomorrow's trade deadline. But if I was Boston, I'd see this as a seller's market, and I'd try to set my sights on next year. But where would Boston be without David Pastrnak? They might be dead last.
Yeah, they would be in a really, really tough spot. If the moves that they made in the offseason did not work out for them.
Like we just talked about how David Pasternak's second in the NHL over the last month and a half in points, yet Boston has 3 wins in their last 10 games. It's just incredible how much he is out. He should get Hart votes this year. That's how important he's been.
It's not that team. Crazy, definitely.
No, it's not. He's having an incredible season, and we know Timmy's got a big points lead over other Ottawa Senators.
15 points.
15 points. Okay, let's see what Past is it. Oh my god, do you know how much Past is leading the Bruins scoring by?
I'll say 22.
30.
Oh my God. Well, that's like the one year when Taylor Hall won MVP. I believe it was a 40-point swing between him and his next teammates. It's crazy.
Yeah, there was a year, and this just came into my head. Was it? Yeah, it must have been the year. Yeah, he finished 3rd. In 1999-2000.
Okay, we're going way back.
No, but this is one of those ones where it's just etched in hockey history. Yeah. Oh, no, it wasn't that year. He only led it by 24. There was a year where it must have been the next year. Yeah. There was a year where Pavel Bure led his team in scoring by a gazillion points. Yeah, here it is. Okay, 2021, Pavel Bure had 92 points and won the Rocket Richard with 59 goals.
Okay.
The second leading scorer on that team was Victor
Panthers, I
Kozlov.
assume?
Yeah.
Okay.
With 37 points.
So he had more goals than the next guy had points.
He had
Wow.
22 more goals than the next guy had points.
That's insane.
What's that? 92 minus 37. 55 more points than the next guy on his team.
Good call using the calculator on that one. And I'm pretty sure the rumor was Pavel Bure was a guy that was not sharpening his skates hardly at all. And he still had all that speed. Like, just crazy. The people in the NHL, they switch out their skate blades to be sharp by the period.
Yep.
Crazy.
He was still fast, though.
But I think of that, there's probably something to say there, Ross, because he doesn't have those sharp edges, so he's got to push a lot more. You're building a lot more of that leg strength. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert. Maybe I'm way off on that one, but I remember reading that in a hockey book as a kid.
Okay. Well, we're so far off the rails. I think it's a good time to get some final thoughts from you on today's show.
All right, final thoughts. I'm ready for this one, Ross. It was a double win for the Senators organization, and this was a big one, Ross. The Belleville Senators knocked off the Hershey Bears, defending back-to-back champion, Calder Cup champion Hershey Bears, who lead their division, and the Belleville Senators were able to get a 6-2 win on them. Jan Yannick had a Gordie Howe hat trick. Max Gannett gets a second game in a row where he scores an empty netter. Malcolm Subban played great, and now the Ottawa Senators are firmly, well, I shouldn't say firmly, but no longer are they tied. How about I say that? With the Syracuse Crunch in a playoff spot, they have 60 points. The Crunch have 58, both with 53 games. So that was a big win for the Belleville Senators.
Well, how about a little Peelsy revenge game goal, too?
And that goal was sick. Go watch the highlights in the slot. Top cheese, no chance for Hunter Shepard there. So a great game for the Belleville Senators, and they're really making a push here.
Oh, it's Hunter Shepard in goal. That's the guy who looks like Happy Gilmore's caddy. Remember, he backed up in Ottawa for one of those games with the Capitals.
Yeah, well, not good times for him in this one, as he got beat 5 times.
Yes, he did. And I just want to give a shout out to Jorian Donovan. He went a total of 46 games without scoring a goal in the AHL. And now he's got 2 goals in his last 3 games. On a 3-game point streak, 4 points in his last 3 games. So shout out to Jorian Donovan. He's a guy who Sens Prospect says he has a lot of time for. Great skater, just going to need a little bit more seasoning to get to where he needs to be in a serious NHL prospect level. But great to see from the Belleville Senators last night. And FanDuel still hasn't figured out that Zach McEwen's back and that they've got all these other guys back who are good AHL players. So get in on the action on FanDuel. I'm 2-0 in my last 2 games with Belleville.
Especially when Levy Merrilainen starts. I mean, Subban had a great game, but when Levy starts,
they were plus 230 on the 60-minute line last night. Easy victory. It's 4-1 like halfway through. So shout out to the Belleville Senators. Shout out to all of our great sponsors here, Glebe Central Pub and FanDuel. That's Brandon Piller. I'm Ross Levitan. We'll be back tomorrow with more of a preview episode. We'll break down anything that happens. But if the Sens make a trade, bonus episode coming ASAP. That's it for us today. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.